The film begins in a somewhat eerie forest where a man's body is seen lying on the ground, shot. Then, a cat appears and sniffs the corpse, but it is killed by an arrow shot by a man wearing a special suit. Next, Eli is seen walking through a desert. In a distinctly post-apocalyptic landscape, Eli walks along a road and comes across a car that appears to have been abandoned for a long time. He quickly checks it for supplies like water or food. Continuing down the road, he arrives at a crumbling house and searches the cupboards to see if he can find anything useful. He tries to fill his canteen at an old, dusty sink, but unsurprisingly, no water comes out of the faucet. When he opens a door inside the house, he finds a body hanging from a rope. He takes the deceased's boots and seems pleased with the small find. Eli decides to spend the night in the house. He builds a fire to keep warm during the night and roasts the cat he had hunted in the forest. Ironically, a cat barbecue. He uses the fat from the meat to moisturize his lips, as the air is extremely dry in that environment and sandstorms. Eli has an old battery that he uses to charge his worn-out iPod. He feeds a rat and, to the sound of his iPod, sharpens his machete, cleans his gun, and finally uses a kind of wet wipe to clean himself. After a bath, a meal, and a sip of water, Eli takes an old book wrapped in cloth from his bag and seems to read it until he falls asleep. The next morning, Eli wakes up and sees that his iPod battery is low. He packs up his things and hits the road again, walking through a devastated, destroyed landscape until he comes across a woman lying in the middle of the road next to a shopping cart filled with trinkets. The woman begs him not to hurt her and offers food in exchange for letting her go. She asks for help with her broken cart. Eli briefly surveys the area and then says out loud that the only good thing about the world no longer having soap is that you can smell robbers from miles away. At that moment, 3 men emerge from behind a sign on the side of the road, and 3 more step out from behind an old truck. The leader of the gang says he's impressed by Eli's skill and confronts him about what he's carrying in his backpack. The robber demands that Eli take everything out of the backpack and place it on the ground in front of him, but Eli refuses. Eli loses his patience and says that if the guy touches him again, he'll cut off his hand. The thug mocks him and tries to touch Eli again, but this time Eli reacts incredibly fast and actually slices the man's hand off. The rest of the gang looks confused, not fully understanding what just happened because it was so quick. Even so, they team up to try to kill Eli. Eli in turn shows himself to be extremely skilled and takes down the 5 remaining attackers in under a minute without firing a single shot, using only his machete. After finishing off the rest of the group, Eli walks up to the gang leader, the one who lost his hand, and finishes him with his machete. Eli searches the bodies for any useful belongings, then kneels down and appears to pray. He then approaches the woman with the cart and inspects the water she was carrying, but it doesn't seem clean, so he continues on his way, leaving her behind. Back on the road, Eli comes across a collapsed overpass, a chaotic scene filled with wrecked cars and debris everywhere, a clear aftermath of the war. Then he spots a man and a woman walking along a road under the overpass. The two are intercepted by a biker gang. One of the bikers kills the man without saying a word, and they begin to pursue the woman with bad intentions. At that moment, Eli debates whether or not to help the woman, repeating the phrase, "keep walking," to himself. The gang ends up killing the woman and looting the bodies. Eli keeps walking through the devastated roads. Eli eventually reaches a settlement, a small town. As he enters, people begin to stare at him, knowing he's an outsider. He heads to a store and is met with hostility. The shopkeeper points a gun at him, but Eli quickly makes it clear he's just passing through and doesn't want trouble. He's there only as a customer. Once the tension dies down, the store owner says he'll need to check Eli's hands, since in this new world, some people have turned to cannibalism due to extreme food scarcity, and one telltale sign is trembling hands. Eli then asks the man to repair his portable battery. The man agrees, and they begin to negotiate the price, since in this new world, money has lost its value and goods or services are often traded for other goods or favors. They settle the deal. Eli pays with a lighter and some seasoning packets. After, Eli notices the same biker gang, the ones who killed the man and woman under the overpass, arriving in the town. In the next scene, we're introduced to Carnegie, essentially the mayor of the town, sitting in his office, reading a book when one of his guards informs him that the biker gang has returned with some goods for him. In a brief conversation, Between Carnegie and the gang leader, Carnegie talks about a certain book he desperately needs to find. He seems disappointed, as the gang leader has brought him several books in the past, but not the one he's looking for. The gang leader offers Carnegie a small bottle of shampoo, which appears to be quite valuable in this world. As a reward, Carnegie lets the gang eat and drink on the house until they resume their search for the mysterious book. Back at the shop, Eli decides to go to the town bar to see if he can get some water. He negotiates with the bartender and manages to trade a kind of scarf and a pair of leather gloves for a canteen of water. The bartender calls out to Solara, a young woman who works there, asking her to fill the canteen with water. The leader of the biker gang decides to mess with Eli after Eli lightly shooed his pet cat off the bar counter to keep it from climbing on things. The gang leader keeps provoking Eli, and when he gets a bit closer, Eli grabs him by the neck and slams his head against the bar. Eli then tells him he knows exactly what kind of man he is, a killer of innocent travelers, and says he will be judged for the things he's done. The rest of the gang steps in to avenge their leader, looking ready to fight. Surrounded by the bikers and a few more men from the bar, Eli recites a verse from the Bible and draws his machete, ready for battle. All the men around him attack, and Eli takes them down one by one with incredible speed. It's a massacre. Just as Eli is about to finish off the last attacker, he is interrupted by Solara, who returns to the bar with his canteen. Immediately after, Carnegie's guards subdue Eli and take him upstairs to Carnegie's office, which is located above the bar. The two begin a conversation, and Carnegie shows great interest in hiring Eli. He sees Eli as an educated man with exceptional combat skills, something extremely rare in times like these. Eli refuses the offer and says he has to go west. Carnegie then asks him to stay the night in town, enjoy some of its luxuries, and reconsider the offer by morning. Carnegie's wife, Claudia, brings food and water to Eli in the room where he's staying, and it's revealed in this scene that she is blind. Eli asks if she lost her sight during the war or afterward due to the sun, explaining why everyone wears sunglasses all the time. Claudia replies that she was born blind, so it's easier for her to cope. She's never seen the world, so she doesn't miss it. After leaving Eli's room, Claudia speaks with Carnegie and says Eli seems different from most men and drifters. He seems educated and doesn't act like a savage like most of the men in this post-apocalyptic world. She believes Eli won't change his mind about working for Carnegie. Carnegie then tells Claudia to send her daughter, Solara, to offer her services to Eli. Claudia begs him not to do that. Solara goes to Eli's room at Carnegie's request, hoping to soften his heart and maybe convince him to stay in the town and work for Carnegie. Eli refuses to sleep with her in exchange for anything. That's not part of who he is. Desperate, Solara explains the situation to Eli, telling him that if she doesn't spend the night in his room, Carnegie will hurt her mother. She begs him to lie and say they had a good time, just as Carnegie asked. Eli feels sorry for Solara and her mother, so he agrees to go along with the story. As they talk, Eli explains how the world used to be before the war and all the misery, how people had more than they needed and had no idea how precious our resources really were. During the conversation, Solara notices the book Eli carries and becomes curious, bombarding him with questions. Eli then decides to show her how people used to eat in the old days, praying before meals and giving thanks for the food on the table. The next morning, Solara goes to her mother's room. Carnegie asks how the night went. She replies that she did what he asked. At breakfast, Solara tells Claudia to close her eyes and then says grace, just like Eli taught her. Carnegie is immediately suspicious and asks if Eli read her any books. Solara denies it, but Carnegie grabs Claudia by the hair and threatens to hurt her if Solara keeps lying. Frightened, the girl finally admits that Eli has an old leather-bound book with a cross on the cover. Carnegie rushes to Eli's room in a panic, but finds it empty. Eli is actually at the store, picking up his fully charged battery, trying to leave as quickly as possible, but as soon as he steps outside, he runs into Carnegie and his armed men. They begin to talk, and Carnegie explains that all the Bibles were burned after the war, and that the people no longer understand the meaning of faith. He says the Bible contains the right words to control people's minds, a tool of power and influence. Eli responds that finding the right place for that book is the most important thing in his life, but this place isn't it. Eli turns and begins walking away. Carnegie orders his men to shoot him, but miraculously, all the bullets miss. A shootout breaks out. Eli takes down several of Carnegie's men. In the crossfire, Carnegie gets grazed in the leg. Eventually, the head of Carnegie's security finds himself face to face with Eli, holding him at gunpoint, but in another strange moment, he lowers his weapon and lets Eli go. Back on the abandoned highways, Solara catches up with Eli and says she wants to go with him, that her mother believes she'll be safer with him. Solara promises to reveal the location of the town's water source if he agrees to let her tag along. They reach the water source, but Eli tricks her and leaves her behind, continuing his journey alone. Back in town, a man tries to treat the bullet wound on Carnegie's leg. Carnegie begins planning to gather the rest of his men to go after Eli. The head enforcer doesn't understand why they're going through all this just for a book. Carnegie yells that it's not just a book, it's a weapon aimed straight at the hearts and minds of the weak and oppressed. With it, he can gain power and control. The enforcer says he has only one condition. He wants Solara. Eli is once again walking down the deserted roads, repeating his usual phrase. That's not your concern. Keep moving. Meanwhile, Solara manages to escape the cave where Eli had locked her up and follows the road. She hears someone calling for help and stumbles upon the crazy woman with the shopping cart trying to pull the same scam, this time on Solara. When the woman sees that Solara is also a woman, she tries to warn her of the danger and urges her to leave, but it's too late. Two bandits surround her. Just when everything seems lost, Eli appears out of nowhere and kills both assailants with a bow and arrow. Solara, panicked and in tears, thanks him for saving her. Realizing he has no other choice, Eli allows Solara to join him on his journey west. Meanwhile, Carnegie and his men come across the bodies of the robbers along the road and conclude that Eli can't be too far ahead. One of Carnegie's men comments that Eli seems to be protected by something. He always comes out unharmed. Carnegie replies that Eli is just a man, and a man can be killed by a bullet like anyone else. Carnegie and his team decide to set up camp and wait until morning to continue. Eli and Solara do the same, finding a place to rest for the night. As they settle in, Solara asks Eli to read something from the book. He recites a well-known Bible verse for her. Eli explains that the book is so important because it's the last one. He says that during the war, a great hole was torn in the sky, and the sun burned all the previous copies, along with most of the earth, devastating much of the world's population. Eli tells Solara that about a year after the war, when people started emerging from their shelters, a mysterious voice within him led him to this book, buried in the rubble, and told him to take it west, where it would finally be safe. That has been his mission ever since, no matter what happens. He finishes by saying that the voice promised he would be protected, that he wouldn't be harmed, and nothing could stop him as long as he stayed on this path. The next morning, Solara questions Eli about his journey, why he's been walking for 30 years, and how he knows he's going the right way. Eli replies that he walks by faith, not by sight. They continue on the road and come across a house in the middle of nowhere. They decide to stop and see if they can find water or supplies. Upon arriving, Eli and Solara meet an elderly couple who seem harmless at first, but soon they notice the couple's trembling hands, a sign that they're cannibals. Eli and Solara quickly decide to leave, but as they're heading out the front door, they see Carnegie and his group pulling up in their vehicles. With no other options, they are forced to go back inside the house and prepare to fight. The old man who owns the house has an arsenal of weapons hidden in his couch and hands some of them to Eli and Solara. Eli throws a package out the window to Carnegie, pretending it's the book, but it's actually a bomb. A shootout breaks out. Carnegie's head enforcer fires an RPG at the house, blowing apart most of the property and killing Martha, the old woman who lived there. The old man loses control and charges out, gunning down several of Carnegie's henchmen. Then the enforcers open the back of a van and begin spraying bullets with a Gatling gun. The house is completely shredded, riddled with bullets, falling apart, yet miraculously once again, Eli walks out of the wreckage unharmed. The henchmen capture both Eli and Solara. They search Eli's bag, but don't find the book. Carnegie then threatens to kill Solara if Eli doesn't tell him where the book is. Left with no choice, Eli gives up the book, and Carnegie shoots him in the stomach, shaking Eli's faith. In that moment, Carnegie coldly tells him, "You're just a man, and God isn't good all the time." He leaves Eli writhing on the floor and drives off with Solara. In the back seat of one of the cars, Solara strangles the driver with a shoelace, causing the car to spin out and crash off the road. She grabs a grenade from the vehicle and throws it toward Carnegie's car, but it ends up hitting the other van instead. Solara gets into one of the remaining cars and tries to start it to escape. The gang leader sitting in the passenger seat grabs her arm. She thinks he's trying to stop her, but in fact, he'd been impaled by Eli's machete, which had flown forward during the crash. crash. Once again, a higher force seems to intervene in the most critical moments of the journey. Back in the other car, Carnegie decides not to pursue Solara. He already has what he wanted, the book, and the car is nearly out of gas. Solara returns to the house where Eli was shot but doesn't find him. Following the road, she spots him ahead, barely walking, gravely wounded, yet still determined to head west. Solara then picks him up in the car and continues the journey west, even without the book. As they continue driving, they reach a broken bridge by the sea. Eli says they're close to the destination. Meanwhile, Carnegie returns to the town and orders an engineer to unlock the book. Back with Eli and Solara, they finish the last stretch of the journey in a small rowboat crossing the water. Eli is on the verge of collapse, drained of energy and barely conscious. Solara takes over rowing and finally brings them to the western coast. Upon arriving, they're intercepted by an armed man. Eli tells him he carries the King James Bible. They're taken to a sanctuary, a place where the goal is to preserve what humanity used to be and to teach that the world can still be good and just like it was before the war. Strangely, this sanctuary has printing presses and recorders. The man in charge explains that they've been collecting and copying the great works of humanity, Shakespeare, encyclopedias, Mozart's records, and other treasures of art and history, but they had never found a Bible before. Back in the city, the engineer finally manages to open the Bible for Carnegie, but when he does, he discovers the pages are written in Braille, and here comes the big plot twist. Eli is blind. Yes, he fought multiple opponents, traveled hundreds of miles, all without seeing a thing. Carnegie is in disbelief, unable to accept what he's witnessing. Meanwhile, back at the sanctuary, Eli tells the head of the place that he must write down exactly what he says, not changing a single word, and begins to recite. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Then verse 2, now the earth was formless and empty. And so it continues, verse by verse, chapter by chapter, Eli dictating the entire Bible from memory. Carnegie, desperate, asks his wife Claudia to read the Braille Bible. Claudia gives a faint smile and refuses. She watches Carnegie's empire crumble and tells him she can't imagine what it's like to finally have what he wanted so badly, so close, yet forever out of reach. Mocking him, she tells him it's over, that he got what he deserved. And then she walks away. Back at the sanctuary, we see Eli continuing to narrate the Bible as the old man carefully writes every word. The Bible is finally completed and printed by the sanctuary's machines. Eli dies shortly after. Solara stands at his grave, leaving flowers, while Eli's voice is heard thanking God for the strength to complete his journey west, and also expressing sorrow for the harm he caused along the way. Solara, now wearing Eli's gear and carrying his old iPod, says she has unfinished business back home. She sets off on the road alone. As she walks, Eli's voice closes the film, thanking God for the friendship they had built during the journey, and asking that he protect Solara just as he once protected him. That was the recap of the movie The Book of Eli. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.